Delisle Gems in Saskatchewan baseball. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a director with the Center for Canadian Baseball Research, and I'm on the editorial board of the New Journal. And I maintain the research library of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. Okay, according to historian David Shurey, the first recorded game in Saskatchewan took place outside Fort Battleford in 1879 between two teams in Pleasant. I suppose I should really say it took place in the Northwest Territories because Saskatchewan didn't become a province until 1905. The arrival of the railroad a few years later led to a surge in baseball activity, particularly in the Qu'Appelle Valley area, spanning the southern portion of the province. Note that the locations we'll be talking about over the next few minutes in red are all in the same general area.
Andrew, do you want a
Yeah.
red pointer?
I do it.
You got one?
By about 1921, baseball was firmly established in the province and replaced such sports as cricket and soccer in popularity. Every town, village, and rural school district had its team. The years following the Second World War marked the golden age of semi-pro baseball in the province, as big money tournaments flourished, attracting barnstorming teams that often featured former and current Negro leaguers, in addition to college players and ex-major leaguers. From 1949 to 1952, the town of Foam Lake hosted large tournaments that drew some of the best teams from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the northern U.S. The first of these annual tournaments in 1949, July, featured 14 teams and drew over 10,000 fans. The team from Delisle carried off the first prize of $1,000 out of a total prize money of $3,000. At mid-century in 1950, Saskatchewan baseball was at its peak. The Indian Head Tournament, first held in 1947, was by 1950 known nationwide and referred to as Canada's greatest baseball tournament. That year, the town of Indian Head imported an all-black team from Florida, and their tournament attracted over 30,000 spectators. The following year, the crowds were also good, but in 1952, they started to decline. And in 1955, semi-pro baseball would see its last tournament in Indian Head. At Foam Lake, the numbers were smaller, but the overall experience was similar. Tournament attendance in 1950 was 15,000, rose to 17,000 in 51, but dropped to half that in 1952, and the tournament was discontinued. This image of the Victoria Day holiday in Wilcox, just south of Regina, provides a sense of the level of activity. But a number of factors combined to weaken baseball's popularity over the next decade. Television, the automobile, increased mechanization and farming, and an aging population seeking less severe winters all played a part. Farming's mechanization reduced the need for seasonal workers, thereby reducing the pools of both spectators and available local players. As well, in the 1950s, baseball in the senior ranks became more competitive, with the result that in order to survive, teams brought in more and more paid players. They were importing many young black players from the States, where even though the color ban was officially over, black players still were accepted with some reluctance by some major league teams. This source of talent dried up as all major league teams came to realize that pennants weren't being won by teams who failed to sign talented blacks. This big league turnaround, while a boon to some individual black players, was a death blow to the Negro Leagues overall. The demise of the Negro Leagues in turn meant fewer talented black players coming north to join Saskatchewan teams, and equally damaging, fewer barnstorming black teams coming to Saskatchewan towns and cities to play exhibition games. Games that could mean good gate receipts and black ink instead of red on the team's balance sheet, home team's balance sheet. The use of and visits by black players was an integral part of the rise and fall of baseball in Saskatchewan generally. Prior to 1930, there had been many documented cases of blacks coming to Canada from the U.S. to play as ringers. But these were individuals for the most part. Usually they were pitchers, as in the the legendary lefty John Donaldson, who had thrown for semi-pro teams in the Saskatchewan centers of Moose Jaw and Granville in 1925. A single black pitcher helping an otherwise white team was a common arrangement. A team that changed that was the Broadview Buffaloes, an independent team based in southern Saskatchewan on the Canadian Pacific Railway line. Beginning in 1936, the Buffaloes imported a group of black players together each year, housing them at the hotel across the street from the railroad station. That's the railroad station in the background of that photo. The result was a fully integrated roster, one of the first of its kind in Canada or anywhere else, and a batting order similar in makeup to those common in the major leagues some 25 or 30 years later. In 1937, the Buffaloes joined the Saskatchewan Southern League, which set a light schedule of only 9 games, deliberately to accommodate the more lucrative barnstorming and exhibition tournament games. Broadview continued to participate in both league and exhibition games, featuring their integrated lineup in each. Their best player was pitcher Eugene Bremer, that's him certain, who later pitched in the Negro Leagues for a number of years and was a 4-time All-Star. With the Buffaloes, he had already been part of what may have been the first fully integrated team in Canada. He seemed poised to repeat his feat some years later. In 1942, he was pitching for the Cleveland Buckeyes when a rumor circulated that he and 2 of his teammates, third baseman Parnell Jones and outfielder Sam Jethro, were about to receive tryouts with the American League's Cleveland Indians. But a traffic accident then injured Bremer and killed 2 of his teammates, scuttling the tryouts. Had Bremer been signed by the Indians, he might have been a 2-time trailblazer, once on each side of the border. If it was the Broadview Buffaloes who moved the integration process one step further, it was the Indian Head Rockets who completed it. I'll leave the details to Max later, but the town of Indian Head, already hosting Canada's greatest baseball tournament, decided they should field a team of their own. To do so, they negotiated the move of an all-black team, the Jacksonville Eagles, to Indian Head, lock, stock, and barrel for the 1950 season. Even the team bus was included. The process of baseball integration in Saskatchewan was now complete. This tournament poster from 1951, from Max's collection, by the way, gives you some idea of the talent on the Rockets. The roster includes former Negro Leagues great Chet Brewer, then 44 years old, as well as 25-year-old Tom Alston, who in 1954 would become the first black player on the St. Louis Cardinals. And this is the 1952 team. The smiling figure in the top row is pitcher Nat Bates, then 20 years old. Max will have more to say about Nat. Nat's still with us, having run this past summer for mayor of Richmond, California at age 90. Richmond is just north of Oakland and is probably better known to all of you as the home of the Rosie the Riveter National Historic Park. The circled fellow in the front row is 19-year-old Pumpsy Green, a full 7 years before his Red Sox debut. And it's too bad we're missing one of our regular attendees today, but this is a lesser-known team from Golden Prairie in the late 30s, in a classic prairie setting. In the front row is Paul Martin, later to attain great fame as the grandfather of the university's own Heidi Jacobs. This is one of the most successful and best-known teams of the era on the prairies, the Delisle Gems. They had used the name Commodores until 1949. 2 years before this, in 1947, the Commodores had won the Saskatchewan District League pennant, but it was in tournament play that they really shone. They reportedly won 25 of the 26 tournaments that they played, and their only loss was in a tournament final game, so that means that out of 80 games played, they only lost 1 game in the tournaments. This 1949 team is special as well because it has some very familiar faces, especially to those of you who are hockey fans. The Prairies produced scores of professional hockey players in this era, most notably Elmer Locke and Gordie Howe from Saskatchewan and Kerry Sawchuk from Manitoba. But Delisle, with its population of roughly 500 people in 1950, featured these men on its baseball team, let alone its hockey team. Number one, up at the top left, is Max Bentley. 2 is Bert Olmsted. 3 is Bev Bentley. 4 in the bottom left there is Emile Francis. 5 is Doug Bentley. 6 is Roy Bentley. And 7 is Reg Bentley. For those of you counting at home, that's 47 NHL seasons and 8 Stanley Cups from a town of 500 people. But it's not these Delisle gems that we want to talk about today. It's these ones. This is the 1954 Delisle Gems junior team featuring our guest today, pitcher John Farley. John, please join me.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep. Yeah, that's great. You did well. So nice of you to bring your fan club with you today.
Yeah. I'm told they won't embarrass me too much.
Okay, first of all, how did you come to be involved with the Gems in the first place?
Well, I grew up in Delisle, the town we were just talking about, and we lived on a farm. And I started pitching because I was driving a truck when I was about 14 years old, and I had to wait for the combine. And I had a baseball, and the back of the truck's a big target, so away you go. And I practiced. I'd get 20, 30 minutes practice between loads on the truck. And that's how I started. And that's how I got interested. The more I did it, the better I liked it.
So that's your version of throwing rocks at squirrels.
Yeah, except it was baseballs.
Yes.
Now, I had to have a supply of baseballs, which the local people had supplied me with, because they get ripped up pretty bad when you're throwing at a hard target.
Now, this is the junior team. Was there some expectation that players would graduate from the junior team to the senior team somehow?
If they were good enough, they did. Most of them didn't, but there was a few of them that did, and they did. Well, I went on and pitched with the senior team in tournament play. And a few couple of the good ones that are there, they played with the senior team also.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Can you tell us something about some of these other people in this photo?
Well, there's about 3 good ones, I think, in that picture. And they all were playing, well, some pro hockey. Arlo, I think, played in, and I'm not sure he's in that picture, but he was the older brother, and he played in Westminster for quite a few years. But all of them played out in the U.S. one way or the other as a hockey player. They're all hockey players.
Okay.
But they're also good baseball players. Now, all that team is local. Everybody in that picture is from Delisle or within 5 miles of Delisle.
That's quite amazing, because I don't know about 1954, but I mentioned in 1950 the population was 500. That's
So it was about the same when I was there.
pretty amazing. All right, I noticed a couple of things about this photo. If we go back to the previous one, there are some people in these photos that are in both. So, for example, there's the gentleman at each end in the top row, who assumes the non-players.
Okay, that's George Orchard on the left side.
Those are the same 2 guys in that photo.
Okay, you got Bill Orchard now, and then George Cosgrove, and at the other end you got Max Bentley.
Okay.
And beside him is George Orchard, the 2 Orchard brothers. They ran the Ford automobile dealership in Delisle.
So were they sort of the administrative?
They were. They organized it. They were looking after the finances and basically ran the team. Now, Doug Bentley isn't in that photograph, but he was also a pretty strong driver of the team, coaching and helping along with the team.
Okay, so the fellows in the suits were the off-the-field guys, and
That's right.
And the Bentley guys were in charge in the field.
Yeah. George Cosgrove's son is in that picture too, Jim Cosgrove. He's in the, I'm not sure, I can't see it from here exactly where he is in that row, but he's there.
Okay. So Max Bentley was still involved in '54 then?
Oh, yes, definitely. He was playing a lot of tournament ball. The senior team was still playing a lot of tournament ball in those days.
Yes, with great success, I understand.
Yes.
Now, was there an official manager or coach, or was it unofficially in the hands of the Bentley brothers?
I think it was unofficially in the hands of the Bentley brothers. Doug was
How
probably.
did you, the town is so small, how did you manage to keep players coming into the system if there weren't that many people?
Well, and that particular team there was all local. Now, one thing about it, if you couldn't measure up what they wanted for a player, you weren't on the team very long. They didn't play it for fun, they played it to win.
Now, we heard earlier about how some teams like the Rodney Buffaloes had to balance playing league games with the exhibition and tournament games because the latter were much more lucrative. Did you have anything like that? Did you play both exhibition?
Yes.
And
I was playing with this team and with the senior team at the same time. And they would have tournaments during the week or on the weekend mostly. And I would be drawn into those tournaments. So they happened in the week, during the week sometimes too. It was amazing.
and were you in school at this time?
I skipped a lot of school.
See,
In fact, when I graduated, my principal said I had no outstanding feature except I missed more school than you could find in any other student. That was a combination of baseball and working on the farm.
well, that's something to hang your hat on. Where did the name Commodores come from?
Well, there was a Commodore Cafe in Saskatchewan, and I suspect the Lucases owned that. Now, Spiro was the guy who I didn't know the older members of the family, but I think the other ones that probably spearheaded that name.
Okay.
It's still there, as I understand it.
Max
Maxwell filled us in on that. Not there anymore. Well, that's right, you told me last night, wasn't it?
Now, one thing I've often wondered about, just let me go back a few slides here. How is the attendance estimated?
Well, the fields that we played in, especially in tournament play, were all open fields. Saskatchewan type fields, flat, they'd have a fence around them, and then you could walk in if you wanted, but they would run a gate, and most people came in cars. You can see the cars around the diamond, hard on windshields, a lot of broken windshields. Fly balls are dangerous from the car. Anyway, what they would do is they would either have a gate or they would have a donation, just pass the hat, basically. They did it two ways. And well, I know the first time I realized what they were doing, one of the guys got up and said, oh, I gotta count the cars. I said, why the hell are you counting cars? He says, because I know how much that gate is going to approximately be, and I don't know whether we're getting screwed on the proceeds or not.
Oh, yes, okay.
And I guess they did that at most of the tournaments, they'd count the cars.
So what you're telling me then is there was no gate through which people would funnel to?
No, well, there was a gate you drove through, but there was only for an automobile. If you wanted to walk into the field, you could come walking in from the side. In Delisle, there was a gate on the left side at left field, and there was an arena, and you could walk down the arena and come into the field without going through the gate.
You guys should have taken lessons from the owners of the fashion race course in 1858. If you would fix it up so you could charge admission so you could get money out of people. Okay, now I noticed about this, I know this is Wilcox, not Delisle, but I would imagine the circumstances were very similar.
It would look the same.
Yeah, I don't see any lights, so all your games were.
All the games that I played in Cairns Field, it had lights, but we played in the afternoon. I never ever played under lights, and we never had lights. The lights were having discussion at Delisle, the town decided they couldn't afford them.
Okay.
There wasn't enough money to justify it.
Bentley Brothers hockey salaries didn't pay.
No,
Now, looking at that again, besides the lack of lights, as you alluded to, it's awfully flat and it's awfully wide open. Wouldn't wind be a factor or sun or?
from a pitcher's point of view, definitely. The sun on your back is beautiful for a pitcher, because the batter's looking at the sun. You take advantage of that. And the same thing when you're playing with wind. Well, the wind can do two things. If the wind is on your back and it's strong, it's going to affect how the pitch breaks. If it's against you, the pitch is going to break a lot more. So you have to alter, you have to adjust a little. It don't adjust too much, but you have to adjust.
Well, would you throw more breaking balls if the?
Probably. I had some pretty good catchers, so I didn't very often shake off what they wanted. I had one instance where they wanted me to walk a guy who was a good batter. And I could tell the guy, and he got loose because my catcher's standing 2 feet to the side of him because he stood up like this. So the first pitch went across the corner of the plate and strike one. And everybody kind of looked at it, oh, he's made a mistake. Anyway, that went on, and I cornered the ball 2 times. Then everybody started to get, was this a walk or not? My catcher's still standing at the side. And I could see the batter was loose. The next one was a curveball right across the center. He was out. I thought I was going to get help when I got into the dugout because I could see Doug saying, what the hell is he doing?
That's,
That was a moment, kind of an achievement moment. I didn't want to walk the guy, but even though I got orders from the dugout to do it.
That's, Dick Williams must have got that idea from you when he did, was it Rolly Fingers and Johnny Bench in the series when that happened? So you were the trendsetter. Okay, now, I think you mentioned that because it was very dry, what happened when it rained? Was the ground able to
No.
water?
Water, a thunderstorm had ended. We were invited to the Panoka Stampede at one point, and we were, well, to go there, it was kind of a story. We drove from Delisle to Panoka, which is a fairly long drive, and nobody wanted to pay for hotel rooms, so we left early in the morning. Anyway, I don't know, if you've been in the prairies, you know what the roads are like. They're straight, they're flat, and there's not too much traffic. And we decided to go across country, and we were moving along at a fairly good pace, like probably about 75 or 80 miles an hour. And the big old car we had, and a mountain picked us up. Anyway, he stopped us just inside the Alberta border, and of course, he's ready to give us a ticket. And we give him this sob story. We're late for the Panoka Stampede. We've driven all the way from Saskatchewan, so he lets us off. Well, anyway, we continued on to Panoka. We're sitting in the stands, and I happen to glance over about 20 feet down. There's our friend Imani looking at me, and he waves. Never said anything.
So what you're saying is that the fields would turn to mud?
Yeah, well, okay, I didn't finish the story. That particular day, we had to play, I think it was Great Falls, Montana, because I remember the guys were trying to go, well, this team is really good, and they're so-and-so, and he played in major leagues, and yeah, he was a major league prospect also. Anyway, we got him to play 3 innings. I didn't play in it. I was a backup pitcher. Thunderstorm came along, rained the whole thing out. They called the thing off. They gave us all $50 and sent us home. That was the start of the Panoka Stampede. I never did go to the Stampede. I went back to Delisle.
And is that a fairly frequent occurrence, the thunderstorms washing
Yeah,
stuff out?
often enough that it was a problem at times.
Now, what about the quality of the baseballs? I'm thinking, particularly for a pitcher, the seams, the heights of the seams and all the rest of it must affect your grip and the spin rate you can put on.
Well, I a certain way I grab the ball depending on the pitch. That's why you keep the ball in. You don't want anybody to see what you're doing with the ball. So, and I can't tell you exactly how I did it, but I know I had different grips for different pitches, definitely.
Yeah, and I understand that your attempts to hide the ball sometimes didn't work because you had another.
Oh, well, that was later on. After I graduated from university, I played in northern Manitoba, in Thompson, Manitoba, actually. There was enough people in the town, of 6,000, I think we had 4 teams to play the regular schedule. And at the end of it, yeah, there we are. That's it. You can see the trees, the flat field, mostly gravel, and all the field isn't gravel, it's dirt, but it was flat. And you could play from 9 o'clock at night to midnight, no lights, because the sun never went down. But anyway, after I was actually leaving Thompson, one of the guys that I knew, a friend of mine, said, you know, he was on an opposing team. He said, you know, you realize you lick your lips when you throw a curveball? Oh my God. That is a no-no for a pitcher in any league, but I don't know if anybody else had ever recognized it. They sure as hell didn't tell me.
Okay, you've kindly brought us along your uniform, and I understand your wife was happy to be rid of it.
Oh, no, yeah, I think so.
So there's the Delisle Gems uniform, number 3.
Normally you turn these things in, but they never asked me for it, and I had it, and it never got turned in.
And this must have been awfully warm and scratchy. And
Oh, it was.
Pretty short pants too. But
One game they weighed me, and they told me that I lost 5 pounds during the game, so it had to be all sweat.
and tell this is a legitimate artifact because it comes in a bag that says Prairie Made Wheat Puffs, 25 cents. Saskatchewan. Now, so we talked about some of the management of the team. What about umpires? How did the league recruit umpires? Where did you get your umpires, and what would your assessment be generally of the level of umpire?
In Delisle, Rich Benton did most of the umpiring in the junior games that I played in. Now, sometimes they would schedule tournaments in places where they wanted to make money. I can remember one tournament at Meota. And I said, why are we playing in Meota? Well, there's a lake there and there's a lot of people. And they think they can get a good game. Anyway, we got up there, and I think we were playing North Battleford. Anyway, what happened was, the umpire they had must have been local, because he did not know the game. Both teams knew the rules far better than he did. On one occasion, he changed his mind 3 times. Anyway, by the 3rd inning, I think I remember seeing somebody throwing a wet towel at the other team. They were just almost fighting with each other, and the umpire, of course, wasn't helping. And at that point, the 2 managers got together and canceled the game. Well, anyway, we had to play it the following week, and they took us to North Battleford. And in North Battleford, they brought in 2 umpires from Edmonton. Well, obviously, professional or semi-professional umpires. Anyway, the guy took the 2 teams, the umpires did, lined us up against the wall and said, okay, guys, and he gave us a 15-minute lecture on the behavior of all teams. And he said, if you guys even twist your nose to me, you're out of this game. Anyway, that was an uneventful game. I don't know if we won it or not, I can't remember. But I remember being lectured.
I gather then from those couple of stories that the caliber of the umpire was highly varied.
It was, in most of the games, the only time the umpiring was bad was when he scheduled it on off, someplace when they wanted to make money, and they didn't bring their umpires in. They should have brought in good umpires. Not get someone local.
Now, you mentioned these guys, one of these people are hockey players as well. Have you got any Gordie Howe stories for us?
Oh yeah, I've got a Gordie Howe story. Now, I wasn't playing this, so I got this second hand. You can take it for what it's worth. Anyhow, Gordie played with the Delisle Gems. There was a situation where they hit and run. Gordie was on 3rd, Doug Bentley was batting. And of course, as soon as the pitcher lets go of the ball, Gordie's headed for home. There's no stopping, he's going right home because of the hit and run. And Doug missed the ball, didn't hit it. He stepped in front of the catcher. Gordie hooks legs home, and he's safe. The catcher can't get at him. And of course, the umpire takes one look at this, and he's not the Meota umpire. Gordie's out, just like that. Boom. And both Gordie and Doug protested the call. And the next thing you knew, both Doug Bentley and Gordie Howe were out of the game. Now, after that, I believe Detroit paid Gordie a fairly large sum of money never to play baseball again.
I think that was 1952. I think the Rebels paid him $500 or something.
I heard it was 5,000.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, I heard it was 5,000, but I don't know. I got it all secondhand information.
It's surprising that more people don't know that how to play baseball. We have in the Hall of Fame, there's one of his old first basemen that's an artifact. People are amazed when they go in there and see it.
I was told that he was an excellent ball, a really good ball player.
Sure he
Good
was.
hitter.
Sure he was. And he had a somewhat take no prisoners approach. What about some of the other hockey players? And a lot of those guys had a reputation as being a bit rough and tumble.
They were.
Any incidents?
I remember one instance where we were playing in Eston, and again, they moved the game to Eston for some reason. I think there was some reason that they were running a good crowd there, but anyway, one of our players, the left-hander from Saskatchewan, actually, Max, I didn't even know his name because he didn't pitch a lot. But anyway, this sidearm pitcher, he elected to step first base and throw the ball at you. And he went up a day early, and he showed up at the game, and he was the starting pitcher. But he was so hungover, you could just take one look at him, you knew he couldn't play at all. He'd been out whining and dining and whatever the night before. So I was the backup, and I went in as the pitcher. Anyway, in those days, what I would do is I'd throw for 20 to 30 minutes. I'd work up a good sweat before I went into the game. And this guy said, well, I'll warm John up, the rest of you can go through the normal infield warm-ups. And I started pitching to him. And you always tell the guy what you're throwing. Anyway, I had one pitch that I threw, not always, it was like a fastball, they said I had a reverse spin on it. And it would come in and it broke very sharply in the opposite direction. Didn't bring much, just a few inches. Anyway, this guy sets his glove up. I told him I'd throw it. I threw it. It was at full speed, so it was very close to a full-blown fastball. It broke about that much, but right by the corner of the glove, right in the nose. He's down on the ground, out cold. There's blood all over, and Arnold Goodman, one of the semi-pro hockey players, swings out of a car and says, John, that's the best half of the pitch you've thrown all day. I thought I killed the guy. But other than a severely broken nose, he was okay. They brought him back, they took him to the hospital, and he showed up about an hour later with bandages and walking. And he had problems, because we were in Edmonton once. We went and played the Edmonton junior team. I think we won the Saskatchewan Northern Championship, and they scheduled a game in Edmonton, and we went down with the whole team. Spiro Lucas organized it. Anyway, we got down there, and we played. We didn't win, but we were never invited back, because apparently there was an incident in this guy's room, and the hotel said they never want to see you guys again. And I even got calls from Vancouver asking me what the hell was going on with that ball team. They could be a rambunctious bunch.
Yes. Well, I remember Bert Olmsted was in one of those photos. Didn't he have a reputation as a hockey player as being very rambunctious?
Oh, yeah. Well, hockey players are used to fighting, so they don't back off when something happens. I remember once I was pitching and Doug came along and said, he called time, walked up to the mound, he said, John, this guy's getting too close to the plate. The plate is yours. He sticks his head over and throw at it. Then he walked off.
And you did as you were told.
I did as I was told.
That's what pitching coaches are for.
Yeah.
Okay. Loaded bats. Shades of cash.
We had an exhibition game against, it was a black team from the U.S., and they were touring. Anyway, we were playing, and the exhibition games raised a lot of money because good crowds came up from. Anyway, before the game starts, Doug was looking there, and he said, I heard him, I'm sitting beside him, he said, those bats, they got loaded bats. I can tell. I'm sure those bats are loaded. So he marched out to the umpire, stops the game, or the start of the game, and says, I want to see all the bats. And they went through the bats, and I guess some of them had been bored out. You could see the plug in the end of the bat. And he said, any of them that are bored out are out of the game. They can't play to use those bats. And they set the bats aside and made the team play with the other bats. I remember that incident.
I wonder how widespread that such malfeasance was.
And now were the bats really loaded? They were bored out for whatever reason.
So ball bearings inside or something.
Well, a piece of lead, a little bit of weight in the right spot.
Okay, overall, how would you assess the caliber of play? Let's not talk about the league games. Let's talk about the tournaments, the big money tournaments that you played in, because that's where the Delisle team got its fame and fortune. Was the caliber of play equivalent to what roughly?
Well, when I graduated from the university, I moved to Montreal. So Montreal had a AAA team, and I used to go to the games. And just looking at their players, from a fielding point of view and the way they played in the field, I think the Delisle team could have stayed with them. Now, when it came to batting, no, these guys could hit the ball a lot harder than most of the players that I played against. I think if I pitched against them, they'd kill me, but I don't know.
So if that's the case, then presumably the level of pitching, so this was the international league you were watching.
Probably.
So the level of pitching, therefore, must have been higher as well.
I would think so.
To cope with the
I would think so.
Yeah. It's interesting though, so you could field and run and.
Looking at what they're doing in the field and fielding the ball, I didn't see any difference. But I thought the batters were strong. When they got a hold of the ball, they really gave it a ride.
I'd like to open this up to everybody. John, you want to?
Go ahead.
Just two questions. They're simple. What was the length of your career that you would say you were a good pitcher and then when you had to leave the game? The second question is, did you ever win any significant trophy?
No, no significant trophy. We won championships, but I don't recall ever getting a trophy for it. We were just champions.
But didn't you win cash prizes?
Oh, well, the tournaments, when you went on a tournament, what normally happened is the guy driving the car got 20 bucks extra, and then they split the money between the team. Now, the team also kept some money for running the team. For instance, when I played ball with Delisle, I never had a problem with baseballs. I always had about 20 baseballs at the farm that I could practice all day. I had a hammer mill. It's the only thing I could throw against. You can't throw against wood because you break it. And I had a hammer mill, which is slightly wider than a base, quite a bit actually. It had a round driving pulley in the middle, and the trick was to place your pitches around the driving pulley. And I practiced that probably an hour every night. I remember when I was pitching all the time, I went up there like calluses on the tips of my fingers,
That's,
just to throw the ball.
that's amazing. That's shades of Bill Veck's famous story about Satchel Paige, where Veck would take a piece of wood up to home plate and he would pound 4 nails in the 4 corners of a piece of wood, and Satchel Paige would pitch and knock the nails in the rest of the way. Apocryphal story, but that sounds very similar to what.
Well, that story in Pinoca, I didn't tell you about that. When we were there, they had an easy chair sitting out by first base, and apparently Satchel Paige had been hired to pitch for the local team, Pinoca. I never did see him. I saw the easy chair, but there was a lot of discussion. They were all trying to figure out how old he was at the time. God, he hasn't even, at least he's 50 years old probably. I remember that discussion in the dugout.
What about your career?
Okay, you know, like when I started and when I finished, well, I finished basically playing at Delisle when I graduated in 1960, and I started about age 15. That picture that he was showing earlier there, I think I was 12 years old in that first picture, and I started pitching by then, I was probably 15. So I got 15 to, what, 22?
Sure.
And, okay? Thanks.
John, we talked last night about Jim Cosgrove, and just wondered if you had any thoughts about playing with him. Noting that I am recording this and we'll talk to Jim later, so.
Well, what I can tell you about Jim is he loved to play baseball. And he probably still tries to play baseball, although he's got to be my age, which is too old for baseball. And he was a pretty good player, but he loved the game. He really loved the game. His dad was one of the administrators to help run the team, so he was right into it. As far as I know, he played ball for years. When I last saw him, I saw him at a reunion in Delisle, and he was still playing ball as far as I know.
Now, is he in the 1954
Yeah, he's
team?
in that picture. He's,
And which guy is he? I can't.
just a minute. Right in the middle, between the bat boys. That's Lynn Bentley right
Oh,
there.
Lynn is in
That's
there.
an Orchard, the young Orchard, George Orchard's son. And that's Jim Cosgrove right behind him.
Yeah, and Lynn is Max Bentley's son.
Lynn is Max Bentley's son, that's correct.
Yeah, there's always a few Bentleys in any Delisle photo, of course. Thank you.
Yes.
The picture you had with the Thompson Blackflies shows a pretty good example that the conditions on the fields were probably pretty spotty. And I'm wondering if you had a place you liked to play, particularly because it was a little better field.
Well, I played in Carriers Field in Saskatchewan, and it was a far better groomed field. Some of the places we played had rocks in the field. And I don't know if you've ever seen a ball hit a rock in a line drive. It's a good way to get the ball in the teeth because it changes direction awfully fast. And the guys used to look at fields, and some of them you got pretty cautious on how the ball was going to jump at you, especially on a hard hit. And a lot of the fields were not maintained that well, especially at the tournament play, because there was no regular playing there. The local teams played there, I guess. But when they had the tournament, and we watched the fields pretty closely, there were some of the fields you didn't want to slide on. There was a lot of gravel around home plate. That was not a good place to slide.
Another question about your uniform. Was that a hand-me-down uniform from the senior team, or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
The junior teams had their own. Most of the time I played with them, the uniform was a little darker than that.
Yeah, the
That was
ones
one
in
of the last uniforms.
Yeah, I think I've seen the gray ones.
That's right, that was a standard uniform.
Orange?
Yeah, so I'm going to follow up on that. My question is about, how hard was it in those days for teams to get bats, gloves, balls, uniforms? They didn't have Amazon then, right?
Well, the team bought the team bought all the bats and all the balls, but the players bought all the rest of the gear. Now, the uniforms obviously were supplied by the teams. When it came to hats, the teams supplied that. But you were expected to buy your own shoes. In my case, I had to make sure I got a steel toe on the shoe, because if I pitched a game without a steel toe, which I did, it cost me a pair of shoes. I'd take the toe right off, wear the toe right out. And gloves, oh, the first glove I bought I got from Ben Bentley, and I think he bought it in California. He was playing hockey there.
Next one?
You had mentioned Heidi Jacobs' grandfather picture, a fellow by the name of Paul Martin.
Yes.
Was there any connection between him and any of the Paul Martins of Windsor, who later went into
I
politics?
don't know.
That's a question for Heidi, I'm afraid. I couldn't tell you. But, yeah, I'm sorry she can't be here, but
There was one other incident I can think of too that might be interesting to people. I again was not there, I'm getting this secondhand information, but there was a game between Scepter and Delisle. Now, I don't know if it was a tournament game or I think it was a league game. Anyway, Doug normally, as in the dugout when the Delisle was batting, they had guys appointed for first base coach and third base coach. Anyway, well, the third inning of one of the games, apparently, Doug said, stay here. The third base coach, I'm going third base. He went out to third base, and about halfway through the inning, whoever was on third base, he must have been a professional hockey player, stepped off the base and took a punch at Doug. Doug's, of course, with hands up, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And the guy threw a punch, so he's out of the game. So Doug came back to the bench, and the guy said, okay, let's play ball now.
Jim?
Yeah.
On the topic of equipment, do I take it that catchers didn't wear masks based on?
Oh no, the catcher wore a mask. My guy he had a glove, and he used to put he'd take a sponge, soak it in water, he had a pail. And every inning, he soaked the sponge in water and put it in there. Because he said if he had just the glove, he said my hand will swell up like a balloon if you're wall.
But I thought the fellow that broke his nose was a catcher, no?
Oh, he wasn't a catcher, he was the pitcher that was hung over. And he was going to warm me up, you see. Well, I think his reflexes were probably because I told him when I was going to throw, the ball never even touched his glove. It went right by the side of the glove and hit him smack. Right? I couldn't hit him square in the nose when I tried with a gun.
I misunderstood, sorry.
And it was a hard pitch. I was probably full speed. I don't know. I never had my pitches timed for speed, but I wish the pitch was doing a high 80.
High 80s, you figure?
I would think so.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Bruce?
You told us about wearing your toe out if you
Yeah.
didn't have the steel. Is there any chance you would demonstrate that form to us?
At this age?
Can you show us your pitching form?
Well, I can try. I'll tell you funny. I was in Woodstock, and there was a bunch of kids wanting to play, and they wanted a batting coach. Well, my reflexes are so good. Not only could I not place the ball, which is batting, I used to do batting practice a lot. And they say, well, we're doing infield practice. John, put a line drive down between third and short, and they would call the play. It's a double play, so. And I could put the ball right there on a line drive. Now, when I played with these kids a few years ago, I couldn't hit the ball. But let's see. And in fact, I pitch so much that when I'm back playing bowl, I have to put my left arm behind my back. Because when I throw a ball, I automatically go into a windup. The first time I threw a 5-pin ball, I threw it halfway down the alley, and they told me, if you throw another one like that, they're going to throw us out of here. It became reflexes. No, yeah, that's the standard. Not very good, but.
So it would be your,
Yeah,
your
right, I am right there.
or your right foot?
Yeah, and you trail your foot across the ground when you pitch, because when you stop, you're down pretty low. I remember one game we played in Delisle. It was an exhibition game. They were raising money. And what they did, they took all the older players who were at 45 and up that had played ball, and they had our regular team. And Doug came up to me and he said, okay, John, this is a fun game. We want these guys to hit. So throw the ball, Don't throw anything fancy, just throw it right down the middle, and throw it fairly hard. We don't want the crowd to know we're letting it hit. Well, anyway, Roy Bentley, Doug's father, was batting, and I threw a fastball down the center, and he caught it. It was a line drive right back to me. I have no idea how I caught it, because I was bent over from throwing this fastball at him. Not really fast, but 3/4 speed. And I caught it here. I had a bruise in my stomach when I caught it. Bev Bentley was on second base, and he was about 6 feet off the baseball. The ball all happened so fast, he couldn't even turn around before I threw him out. It was a double play.
John, did you ever pitch from a mound?
Yes, always.
Always.
Always had a raised mound.
No mound there, is there?
Yeah.
Take a look. There's not much of a mound, but there's a mound.
Yeah.
A mound, and you have to have something you can put your foot on, because you go off it.
The pitching rubbers nowadays, I know, again, there's one in the Hall of Fame, they're embedded about this far into the mound.
Well, they had spikes driven in the ones I think we used. They were about so long and they drove them in the hand. And it was all pretty well all wood.
Okay, any other questions? Our timing's pretty good. Okay, thank you very much, John.